All right. I want you to start this deep dive with a very specific mental image. Just clear your mind for a second.
Okay.
Now, picture a 19th century French painter.
You're probably imagining a quiet, sun-drenched studio.
Right. The smell of turpentine in the air.
Yeah, maybe a guy in a velvet smock gently dabbing paint onto a canvas.
Exactly. Like a bowl of fruit or, a moody landscape. That is the box we usually put them in.
It's the classic archetype. The solitary, sensitive artist, completely removed from the chaos of the real world.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to take that image and hand it a rifle.
Right.
Put it behind a barricade in the middle of a violent street revolution.
It's quite the contrast.
And then, just for good measure, make that same guy the mayor of one of the wildest, most radical districts in Paris.
It sounds like we're mashing up three entirely different biographies into one, but we aren't.
No, we are talking about one man,
Okay.
Émile Jean-Baptiste Philippe Ben.
This is the figure we're unpacking today. And I have to say, looking at the research, this guy is a walking, talking contradiction.
He really is. It is not often you find a watercolorist who specializes in, delicate mythological nudes, but is also a staunch Republican engaging in armed conflict.
It feels like a character a screenwriter made up just to be edgy, right?
Totally does.
Yeah.
But he was very real.
He was. And our mission for this deep dive is to look at 19th century France through the lens of this one man.
Because it's a fascinating lens.
It really is. We want to understand how art and politics didn't just coexist in his life, they violently collided.
Yeah.
We're talking about a man established enough to found the Société des Artistes Français, yet radical enough to be fired from a government post for a conspiracy involving a general.
It is a wild ride.
Yeah.
We've got an intense artistic upbringing, an absolute refusal to sell out for money.
Which is rare.
Extremely rare. A turbulent political career and a downfall that centers around, of all things, a portrait.
And that portrait is really the key. It's the perfect example of the danger of mixing art and politics in this era.
Totally.
But before we get to the scandal and the downfall, we really need to understand how he became a painter in the first place.
Right.
Because looking at his background, it doesn't seem like he had much of a choice.
Let's go back to the beginning then. Émile Ben, born in Paris, 1825. You say he didn't have a choice. Was this a case of the family business?
Absolutely. Art was the family trade. His father was Jean-Baptiste François Ben, often called Ben Père.
Right.
He was Émile's first teacher. So from the moment he could hold a pencil, he's immersed in this world. But it wasn't just his dad.
Right. The materials mention an uncle as well, don't they?
Yes, Nicolas Gosse. And this is where the training gets really serious.
Okay.
Ben studied with his uncle from the age of 12 to 15. Now pause and think about that. 12 to 15.
Most kids are just trying to get through middle school math.
Or deal with puberty. But Ben is in a rigorous, high-stakes art apprenticeship.
That is an intense developmental period. He's not out playing tag. He's mastering perspective, shading, anatomy.
Precisely. And it wasn't just a hobby, it was professional prep. He clearly had the talent to back it up because he moved on to work with Leon Cogna.
Who was a pretty big deal.
A very significant figure in French painting, yes. And then he entered the École des Beaux-Arts in 1842.
For those listening who might not be art history buffs, can you contextualize the École des Beaux-Arts? Is this like, getting into Harvard?
It's Harvard, Yale, and Oxford rolled into one, specifically for art.
Wow.
It was the ultimate gatekeeper. If you wanted a serious career in France, you went through the École.
And the training paid off fast, right?
Very fast.
Yeah.
By 1845, when Ben was just 20 years old, he was already exhibiting at the Salon.
And again, just to clarify the stakes here, the Salon wasn't just a local gallery show where you put out some cheese and wine.
No, not at all. The Salon was the art event of the Western world.
Like the Super Bowl of painting.
Exactly. Thousands of people, critics, potential buyers, government officials. Getting accepted at 20 is a massive achievement.
It signals that you have arrived.
It really does.
So he's a prodigy, he's young, he's talented, and he's firmly in the system. But what was his vibe? If I walked into the Salon in 1850 and saw a bin, what am I looking at?
You are looking at classicism. He was very traditional in his tastes.
Okay.
The sources describe him as a fervent admirer of Michelangelo and Raphael.
Going right to the heavy hitters.
All right. He even took a trip to Rome in 1866 with his star pupil, Joseph Blanc, just to be closer to that Renaissance inspiration.
So we aren't talking about avant-garde rule-breaking art here. We aren't seeing the early rumblings of Impressionism yet.
Far from it. Bin was all about structure, anatomy, and grand themes. He preferred historical scenes, anecdotal moments, and, most notably, mythological nudes.
The list of works in the sources is great. The Hamadryad from 1870,
Yes.
The Death of Orpheus, Perseid Andromede. These are big, dramatic, classical themes.
They are, and they require a high level of technical skill. You have to know the mythology, sure, but you also have to execute the human form perfectly according to very strict academic standards.
Right.
But here is where we have to widen the lens. Bin wasn't just a gallery artist hoping someone would buy a canvas for their living room.
No.
He was a working decorative painter.
I think this distinction is really important because today we hear decorative painter and maybe think of someone painting faux marble in a bathroom or something.
Right.
But in the 19th century, this meant something very different, didn't it?
Completely different. We are talking about massive architectural projects, government contracts.
Think stuff.
He was decorating the Great Hall of the Hôtel du Louvre, which he actually worked on with his uncle.
Oh, full circle.
Exactly. He did work for the Church of Saint-Sulpice, the Crédit Mobilier, and the National Museum of Natural History.
These are major centers of power, finance, and religion in Paris. You don't get these jobs unless you are reliable and respected by the establishment.
And you have to be able to cover huge surface areas. It's physical work. Painting a ceiling or a mural is physically demanding.
Yeah, right.
He even worked on the Egyptian Pavilion for the International Exposition of 1867.
Right, I saw that.
That project was designed by Jacques Gervais, but Bin's contribution was significant enough that he was awarded the Order of the Medjidi.
Which is an Ottoman order. So his reputation is literally crossing borders.
It was. In 1871, he even received 3 commissions from Russia.
Wow. So if you stop the story right here, the profile of Émile Bin is pretty clear. He is a highly successful, establishment-approved artist decorating the walls of the elite.
The definition of an insider.
But we can't stop the story there, because while he is painting ceilings for luxury hotels and receiving medals from foreign empires, he is leading a double life.
And that is where the staunch Republican comes in.
We really need to define Republican in this context. For a modern listener, that word has very specific political connotations depending on where you live. What did it mean to be a Republican in mid-19th century France?
In this era, being a Republican meant you were anti-monarchy and pro-democracy.
Okay.
And you have to remember, France was bouncing back and forth between kings, emperors, and republics like a ping-pong ball.
It was a chaotic century.
Extremely. So being a staunch Republican meant you were fundamentally opposed to the ruling power, if that power was a king or an emperor. It was a radical position.
And Bin wasn't just debating this in coffee shops either. The source says he fought on the barricades in 1848 and 1851.
That is the key distinction between a sympathizer and a revolutionary.
Right.
1848 was the year of revolutions across Europe. 1851 was the coup by Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, who would become Napoleon III.
And fighting on the barricades meant urban warfare.
Exactly. You are piling up cobblestones and furniture in the street and shooting at government troops. You are risking execution or deportation.
It paints such a wild picture. One day, he is carefully studying the brushstrokes of Raphael, worrying about the shading on a nymph's arm, and the next, he is loading a musket with gunpowder-stained hands.
It shows a compartmentalization, or perhaps a fusion, that is just incredibly rare.
Yeah.
But there is one specific story from the research that I think really defines his character. It's the principles over profit moment.
This is the story about the portrait of Napoleon III, right?
Yes. So, Bin is a working artist. Artists have good years and bad years.
Sure.
At one point, he really needed the money. She had a family to support. And he was offered a commission to paint a portrait of Napoleon III for the Town Hall of Montmartre.
Now, Napoleon III is the guy who staged the coup in 1851.
Right.
He is the emperor. He is the arch nemesis of the Republic.
Exactly. He is everything Bin fought against on those barricades.
But the money was there.
The money was there. It was a government job, and he was broke.
I mean, most people would just hold their nose, paint the portrait, and cash the check.
Right. But Bin said no.
He refused.
He flat out rejected the commission.
That is gutsy. It's one thing to fight anonymously in a crowd. It's another to personally reject a job from head of state because of your principles, especially when you're broke.
It highlights that his politics weren't just a hobby or a youthful phase. He was willing to suffer financially for his beliefs. He wasn't a fair-weather Republican.
And that commitment carried right through to the siege of Paris in 1870.
Yes.
This is a dark period. The Prussians have the city surrounded. People are starving, eating zoo animals. It was a disaster. Where was Bin?
He wasn't hiding in his studio. He was appointed to the Council of Armaments and Supplies.
Wow.
He was using his organizational skills to help defend the city. He was active.
But, and the sources make a point of this, he had limits. And I think this is where the story gets really nuanced.
It does. After the siege came the Commune.
The radical socialist government that briefly took over Paris in 1871.
Right. It was chaotic and very bloody. The source notes that while Bin was anti-clerical and close to the extreme radical left, he refused to take part in the Commune.
So he's radical, but not that radical. Or was it something else?
It could be pragmatism. He retired to Argenton during that period.
Okay.
Maybe he saw the violence of the Commune as counterproductive, or maybe he just saw that it was doomed to fail.
That makes sense.
It shows that he wasn't just a mindless revolutionary. He made choices about when to fight and when to step back. He was a Republican, but the Commune was something different. It was an insurrection against the French government itself.
So the dust settles on the 1870s. The Third Republic is finally established. The thing he's been fighting for his whole life is here.
Finally.
Bin is an older man now. He's got his medals, his reputation. You'd think he'd just settle down, paint some flowers, and enjoy the democracy.
He did not settle down. In fact, he leveled up.
How so?
In 1883, the painter becomes the mayor.
The mayor of the 18th Arrondissement, that's
Yes,
much, right?
Today, we think of it as a tourist spot with the Sacré-Cœur, but back then it was the edge of the city. It was working class, it was bohemian, it was radical. And for 6 years, Émile Bin, the classical painter, was the guy in charge of sanitation, zoning, and police.
I love the image of him leaving a studio session to go deal with a municipal budget crisis or a dispute over a street market.
He's fantastic.
But his political career didn't end with a retirement party. It ended in a massive scandal.
The Boulanger affair.
This is where the story turns into a tragedy. It's 1889. Bin has been mayor for 6 years. Suddenly, he is relieved of his duties, fired, essentially by Ernest Constance, the Minister of the Interior.
And the charge is Boulangism. We need to unpack that term because it sounds like a bread baking contest, but it was actually very serious.
Very serious. It refers to General Boulanger. He was this incredibly popular, charismatic general.
Okay.
He was riding a wave of populism, and many people in the government feared he was planning a coup to install himself as a dictator. He was the man on horseback that the Republic was terrified of. So being a Boulangist meant you were suspected of supporting a new dictatorship. Which is ironic, because Bin has spent his whole life fighting for the Republic. Why on earth did they think he was supporting a potential dictator?
Well, the source suggests the root cause was art.
Of course it was. It always comes back to the canvas.
In 1888, the year before he was fired, Bin had exhibited a portrait of General Boulanger at the Salon.
So simply because he painted the guy, the government assumed he supported his politics.
It seems that way. Or at least it gave his enemies the ammunition they needed.
Bin didn't take this lying down, though. What was his defense?
Bin claimed it was pure political manipulation. He pointed the finger at a man named Jules Joffrin.
Who was that?
Joffrin was a socialist who was actually running against General Boulanger in the legislative elections.
Oh, interesting.
Bin believed Joffrin used the portrait to frame him as a Boulangist to get him out of the way.
That is some serious political 4D chess. I'll use your painting to accuse you of treason so I can win an election.
It really reflects the paranoia of the time, but it also highlights the danger of mixing art and politics. A portrait is rarely just a portrait in that environment.
Right.
Bin might have seen it as just a subject, or maybe he admired the general as a soldier, we don't know for sure, but the perception of the artwork became a weapon.
And it worked. The weapon fired. He lost his position.
He did. The Minister of the Interior fired him. It's a tragic end to his political career, brought about by his artistic career.
The two halves of his life finally crashed into each other.
Exactly.
Despite the scandal, though, his legacy in the art world was actually pretty secure. I mean, he wasn't just some guy who got fired. He helped shape the next generation of French painters.
Absolutely. If you look at his students, the names are surprising. The most famous one is Paul Signac.
Signac, the pointillist, the guy with all the colorful dots.
The very same. Bin taught him. And this is fascinating because Bin was a rigid classicist, right?
Yeah, he loved Raphael.
And Signac was a neo-impressionist revolutionary. But it shows that Bin must have been an incredible technical teacher. He gave Signac the tools, the understanding of color and composition that Signac then used to break the rules.
It's the old learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist idea.
Exactly. The source also mentions Henri Rivière and Charles Leandre as students. These were significant artists.
That's quite a roster.
And beyond his students, Bin was an institution builder. He was one of the founders of the Société des Artistes Français in 1880.
And the Salon des Artistes Français the next year, he was literally building the structures that supported French art.
He was, and he was recognized for it. He received the Légion d'honneur rank of Knight in 1878.
So, despite the political disgrace later on, the state had already recognized his contributions.
Yes, very officially.
There is one final project mentioned in the source that I think is the perfect capstone to his life. It happened in 1889, the same year of the scandal, right?
Yes, 1889, the centenary of the French Revolution. A huge year for a Republican like Bin.
He executed a 20-canvas historical diorama in the Parc de Butte-Chaumont. Can you describe what a diorama was to a 19th century audience?
Think of it as the IMAX of the 1800s.
Oh, I like that.
It was an immersive visual experience. You would stand in the center and be completely surrounded by these massive paintings. 20 canvases is an enormous undertaking.
And the subject matter.
It covered the history of the republic he loved so much. From the storming of the Bastille all the way to the departure of Léon Gambetta during the siege of Paris.
Siege he lived through.
Exactly. He was painting history that he had personally witnessed and participated in. He was documenting the birth and struggle of the Republic.
It's almost poetic. He's getting fired by the government for alleged treason, while simultaneously unveiling a massive monument to the history of that same government.
It really underlines the tragedy and the irony of his situation. He was a true believer in the Republic. He was celebrating it in paint at the very moment the Republic turned its back on him politically.
It's heartbreaking in a way. He dedicated his life to two things, art and the Republic. And in the end, his art was used to sever his tie to the Republic's leadership.
That's a powerful way to put it. Émile Bin died a few years later, in 1897 in Marly-la-Ville.
A quiet end to a very loud life.
Indeed.
So when we step back and look at this deep dive, what are we really seeing? Because to me, Bin feels like a man who refused to stay in his lane.
That is the big takeaway. He refused to separate his art from his convictions. In the modern world, we talk a lot about staying in your lane. Athletes shouldn't talk politics. Actors should just act.
Right.
Bin is the antithesis of that. He wasn't just a painter, and he wasn't just a politician. He was both, fully, all the time.
He painted ceilings for the Hôtel du Louvre to make a living, but he refused the emperor's money to keep his soul.
And he paid the price for it. He lost his political career because of a painting. It's a reminder that historical figures are rarely one-dimensional. We look at a painting of a nymph in a museum, and we think, stuffy old academic painter. We don't realize that the hand holding the brush also held a rifle on a barricade.
It really makes you wonder about the intent versus the consequence.
How so?
Well, Bin claimed he was fired because of a political rival manipulating the narrative around that portrait of General Boulanger.
Right, the fake news of the 19th century.
Exactly. In today's world of media manipulation and cancel culture, how different is Bin's story from modern political scandals?
It's remarkably similar.
Was the portrait of Boulanger actually an endorsement? Did he secretly support the coup? Or was it just a painting?
We will never truly know his intent. We can only see the consequence. A career ended because an image was weaponized.
A sobering thought to leave you with. Next time you see a portrait, ask yourself, is it just art or is it evidence? Thanks for diving deep with us today.
A pleasure as always.